Moving on, well, in a geopolitical pivot that's reshaping alliances in Asia, Malaysia has undergone a dramatic turnaround from flirting with a controversial Pakistan-Turkey axis to now standing shoulder to shoulder with India in condemning terrorism. Just a few years ago, under former Prime Minister Mahathir Mohamad, Malaysia was critiquing India's stance on Kashmir, even risking economic ties by aligning with Islamabad and Ankara, aimed at challenging New Delhi. But enter Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim, who's flipped the script. Today, during Prime Minister Narendra Modi's official visit to Kuala Lumpur, the two nations inked deals on defense, economy and local currency trade, hailing a future of cooperation and shared growth. The pact signed between India and Malaysia encompass 11 key agreements, including collaborations in semiconductors, security between national security councils, healthcare, disaster management, anti-corruption, UN peacekeeping and audiovisual co-production. So what sparked this exit from the shadows is the question that we're going to ask and we're going to talk about. Joining us on the show is Ambassador Bhaswati Mukherjee, former diplomat. Mr. Pathikrit Pain, foreign affairs expert, also joins us on the show. Adit Kothari, foreign affairs expert, joining us on the broadcast as well. And last but not the least, Joyita Basu, editor of the Sunday Guardian, with us on the program as well. Ambassador Mukherjee, I'll begin with you. Well, what do you think is responsible for this turnaround? All I can say is that perhaps better sense prevailed, associating with Pakistan and Turkey, two Islamic theocratic regimes, who do not really care about how their economies prosper with alliances with India. But it seems Malaysia now does.
It's a very important development, Vineet. I'm glad we are discussing it. Anwar Ibrahim has a very different strategic vision for Malaysia. He believes that India is a crucial pivot for rule-based order in the Indo-Pacific. He supports India's look east and look further east policy, ASEAN, and the great potential that exists and which had been neglected during his predecessor's time, whether it's defense or it's economy, an FTA, etc., etc. These are all issues which are of crucial importance to both countries. Malaysia also has a large and important Indian diaspora, like it has a Chinese diaspora. That Indian diaspora, which had been completely neglected by his predecessor, is now beginning to show its support for this new policy. That Indian diaspora is a highly professional diaspora, and they're very supportive of Malaysia's different business ventures, etc. So I think that we would probably perhaps also have a strategic partnership, but certainly the defense and economic elements of the relationship which are now being developed are very important. And it also shows our Prime Minister's strategic vision that in India's extended neighborhood, he is building new bridges so that India has many, many more partners to fall back on if ever we have to go through the kind of stress we went through when we did not have, when we had 50%, 500% tariffs imposed on us, and we were forced to look immediately for new markets. These are new markets. I've been to Malaysia. It looks like a developed country. It has huge potential and it has much goodwill now for India. So we can easily develop much more trade and FTA flows which are of mutual benefit. And Malaysia also, let's not forget, has a common history of colonialism. It's been colonized like India. It is sensitive to external pressures like India. And these are countries which indicate that economic power, whether Trump likes it or doesn't like it, has inexorably shifted from the west to the east. It is the east where the sun rises, which is the most important part of the globe. And that's a fact. And all these relationships which India is building up demonstrate how important Asia is for a stable world economy, for globalization, and for keeping international peace and security. That is very important. And countries that do not succumb to external pressure. Vineet.
Fair enough, ma'am. Professor Rohan Gunaratna, International Affairs expert, is also joining us at this point in time from Singapore. Joyita Basu is with us on the show as well. Joyita, how do you look at this change of heart uh, on behalf of Malaysia in this entire equation when it comes to dealing with India? Zakir Naik is still there, is what I know, and he had been in fact galvanizing. He had been galvanizing a lot of youth, to sort of malign Prime Minister Modi's trip there.
Well, the thing is that whatever, maligning may happen, and frankly, but does it matter? I think one of the reasons why there was such a, I would say, turnaround is that Mahathir Mohamad is not, I guess, not calling the shots anymore. So I guess that really helps. And Mahathir Mohamad was bringing his personal animus of, towards India to political, diplomatic relations, and obviously it was but natural that relations would get affected. But I think that no longer is the case. So traditionally, when it comes to India, Malaysia relations, they have been quite good. Except for a particular for a while, the problems happened. But I think they're now again getting back on track, and they have gotten back on track. And the kind of welcome that Prime Minister Modi received over there, and the kind of visuals that are coming from Malaysia, they're extremely encouraging. And why not?
Okay, all right, fair enough. Professor Gunaratna, how do you look at this evolution of the way Malaysia is thinking? Do you think it has a lot to do with how the world has also gravitated towards India and focused on the more mature themes of economics, people to people progress and trade?
You are very correct. In a multipolar world, it is so important for countries to cooperate based on their strengths. In case of India and Malaysia, both have so much to gain by working together on the economic front. As you mentioned very rightly, in the past, a very significant dispute arose because the extremist preacher from India, Zakir Naik, moved to Malaysia. And of course, despite several requests from India for Zakir Naik's extradition or deportation or rendition from Malaysia to India, that was not acceded to. So this time, Prime Minister Modi, instead of focusing on that issue, he focused on the economic strength between Malaysia and India. There are two things that come to my mind. One is that most of the people coming from South Asia who are now working in Malaysia for several generations, what you call the South Asian diaspora, the largest number came from India. And so the relationship between India and Malaysia is very strong and very powerful, and for more than a century. And I think what is important is to build upon that goodwill, that relationship, that history. Second is, although Malaysia, Pakistan, Turkey has built a very close alliance, and now, of course, that alliance is extending to Bangladesh. What we are seeing is Prime Minister Modi's visit is very timely because it demonstrated to the Malaysians that India also matters. So I think that this relationship will also create greater stability and security for India and Malaysia, because we have seen so many extremists and terrorist groups operating in Southeast Asia as well as in South Asia. Unless governments work together and build a friendship, there will be insecurity for both countries. And the security and intelligence services of both India and Malaysia are very strong, very capable, and they should work together for the stability and security not only of their own countries but of the region. And finally, I believe that there can always be disputes in a multipolar world, but Prime Minister Modi's visit especially because he didn't participate in a very important meeting last year. This year, he took a great leap, maybe a leap of faith, to restore that relationship and to work with Malaysia.
Pathikrit, obviously, there is also a lot of pressure on the Malaysian leadership when it comes to the kind of association they've had with China over the past few years as well. That has not worked out. There were cracks in the middle when it came to China and Malaysia. Do you think that India is obviously that healthier alternative that most of the world is associating with now, and Malaysia was only waiting for its turn to do that?
You are absolutely correct.
Pathikrit?
Vinit,
Yeah, so that question is for Pathikrit, sir.
Yes.
Vinit, good evening. See, I think, if you look at India's own foreign policy, we witness what is called dehyphenation, which means we are having good relation both with the West and Russia. I think many countries are going to do the same thing. When it comes to Malaysia, for them, the recalibration towards India is very important because they had an overwhelming dependence on China. Most of the Southeast Asian countries have an overwhelming dependence on China for economic issues and an overwhelming dependence on probably United States for, for economic issues on China and security issues for United States. I think they want to break out of that binary. That's one part of it. So I think India definitely plays a very pivotal role when it comes to economic aspects of it. There are major areas of, you can call, symbiotic relationship development between Malaysia and India. There are many things which are of Malaysian origin or produced in Malaysia, which are in great demand in India and vice versa. But I think at the same time, let's understand, China as of yet today, even today, it's an $18 trillion economy. So suddenly, countries like Malaysia will not be able to give up on China. Secondly, on the issue of Pakistan also, we have to be very cautious. Yes, there is a major recalibration happening. I think there will be far more focus on India for the Malaysian leadership than they had considered in the past. In fact, the free trade agreement that India had with United States and European Union is going to play a critical role in terms of changing their perception. The fact that India actually withstood all the pressures from the West actually plays in the mind of the Malaysians, but at the same time, if we presume that from tomorrow onwards, they would maintain a distance from Pakistan or Turkey, that is not going to happen. So I think in a way, India also understands that, the political leadership understands that the economic relationship itself may play as a leverage to counter the other reasons for which Malaysia has always voted in favor of Pakistan or have always rooted for Pakistan. That is an issue that you have to deal with. And I think at certain time right now, the kind of economic leverage India can give, because India is the only country, one of the very few countries among the major economies of the world which still maintains a healthy 7% growth rate of its GDP. No other country gives that opportunity as of yet. So even though China is still a bigger economy and the Malaysian leadership cannot give up on China, I think when it comes to diversification, I think when it comes to recalibration, I think when it comes to spreading the basket for their economic cooperation, they would definitely move towards and take India far more seriously than they took in the past. On the issue of weapon systems, defense cooperation also, India offers a far better alternate in terms of quality weapon systems in a cost-effective bracket, especially after the diversification and modernization of India's military-industrial complex, where the private sector is playing a critical role. I think because India's selling of weapon systems do not come with any strings attached, we do not dictate anybody's foreign policy, and neither we have any intention when it comes to economic cooperation to put somebody in a trap like the Belt and Road Initiative. So I think India comes up as an alternative, as an option, and an additional option, and very important option. But I think we should be very cautious in terms of our optimism that they're going to give up on their previous options. That's not going to happen. We are important, but the other ones would still be important for countries like Malaysia. Back to you, Vineet.
Okay, valid point there, Pathikrit and Ambassador Mukherjee. What does this tell Pakistan also, a country that is largely now focused on servicing the debt it has from Saudi Arabia and the IMF and other institutions around the world? What does it mean for Pakistan when it comes to serving its own people? They only have reserves of about $20 billion is the latest report that came out. We also spoke earlier on the channel about how Pakistan is also running out of vaccines to administer to its children, and 46% of the people who live under poverty in Pakistan have not been getting the support that the government was initially giving them when they had trade agreements with India. There were some medicines that were being allowed. All of that has collapsed for Pakistan. What does this mean? What kind of a message is this for a country like Pakistan that has been so rudimentary in its approach?
Well, first of all, as far as Pakistan is concerned, and as their Prime Minister frankly admitted a week ago, I think, that it was very humiliating for him and for Pakistan to beg for money when they were bankrupt. They are not in a good situation financially, and they actually punch much above their weight, and that is getting exposed. They think that they can always have the United States coming to their rescue as well as China. It was very interesting that for the first time in decades, the Americans brought out a map of India, which includes the whole of POK as Indian territory. These are very, very important gains. And I'd like to add that whatever relationship Malaysia has with Pakistan or with China, when we build geopolitical and economic and political bridges with countries that were formerly behaved with us like adversaries and are now want to extend the hand of friendship, we don't expect them to give up their friendships with other countries. That is precisely what we have tried to explain many times to President Trump, that an India-US strategic partnership does not mean that we will just drop our long-standing relationship with the Russian Federation. So if Malaysia wants to keep its ties with Turkey or with China or with Pakistan, that is their prerogative. That as an independent free country they can do so. What is important is to move them from the camp of adversaries to the camp of India's friends. And that dilemma will in any case make Malaysia shift to a certain extent, because sometimes it is impossible to be India's friend and Pakistan's bosom friend at the same time. So they will be forced to make some strategic maneuvers and some changes. Those changes will not be immediately visible, but they will show up. It's like what we did in the Middle East. When we reached out to UAE, we reached out to Saudi Arabia. These countries used to vote against us systematically on issues relating to Kashmir. They no longer do so. They abstain. So these are geopolitical changes and shifts that are happening, which when one joins India's camp as a friend, India doesn't ask them, drop China, drop Turkey. That will happen automatically. You can't sit on the lap of the elephant and make love to the dragon. It's not possible. So at some point of time, they will make the necessary strategic maneuvers. Malaysians are very smart people. They also have a very good diplomatic service. I have interacted with Malaysian diplomats, and like the Singaporeans, they are very, very adept at adjusting, particularly because in both countries, they have large Indian diaspora and large Chinese diaspora. And the Indian and Chinese diaspora in both countries have a very civilized relationship. So I think we will be able to get this through. I think that this particular visit of PM is of particular importance because it demonstrates our interest in our extended neighborhood, in ASEAN, in the important countries which matter to us, like Malaysia, and it also indicates that we are also resetting the geopolitical compass so that those who are friendly with Turkey and Pakistan don't have to be our enemies. We will reach out to them, and at some point of time, they will consider us to be far more important than a bankrupt Pakistan and a regional bully like China. China is not exactly popular in ASEAN because of its bullying tactics, because of what it's done on the South China Sea, because of many, many things. People, countries sometimes don't articulate what they feel. We did the same with Trump. Finally, we came out victorious. We didn't do what you call in India a tu-tu-me-me, which means a continuous fighting back with Trump. When it was necessary to ignore him, we ignored him. When it was necessary not to respond to him, we didn't respond. When we had to respond, we responded in a very brief manner. And ultimately, we were able to get the trade deal through. We were able to get the tariffs withdrawn. And that's how it is. So I am pretty optimistic that this particular move towards Malaysia is going to be a win-win situation for both countries.
And Joyita, this is also perhaps a very important, profound lesson in, geopolitical echelons, to never say never when it comes to an agreement or a relationship with any country, regardless of what the past tells you.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, if you look at it, India and Malaysia have already elevated their relationship to the level of a strategic partnership. I mean, the very fact, and this has come in spite of the kind of, I would say, when Anwar Ibrahim has talked about Kashmir. I think during his Pakistan visit, he talked about Kashmir, and that did throw a little. But after that, we went and had this. We elevated this thing as a strategic partnership. So the very fact, you see, as Ambassador Mukherjee also said, how can you possibly have a constructive relationship with a country like Pakistan, whose economy is the size of I would say a tiny Indian state, which is bankrupt, which runs on terrorism. How long can your ummah and how long can your religion ensure that you have a constructive relationship? After all, every politician, every political party has to stay in power by doing something good for the people. Talking about religious brotherhood is not going to feed your people. Think of what happened when India stopped importing palm oil from Malaysia. You remember at that time there was a huge turmoil that it affected Malaysia's economy. So it does not make sense for Malaysia to look at maybe Pakistan and dump India. Whatever Mahathir Mohamad did or whatever Zakir Naik, they have their own constituency. But serious politicians, I would say, when they have to rule, when they have to govern, you have to be friends with right now the fourth largest economy of the world and which has the purchasing power. How can you possibly choose Pakistan over India? And in terms of, say for example, great big power politics, in terms of China, all the ASEAN countries are looking to not get involved, not to become, football between the US and China. They would rather go to a relatively neutral power. They would rather have business relationship with a relatively neutral power, which India is. So it is but natural that sensible countries, sensible leaders will automatically veer towards India.
All right, fair enough. We've run out of time, but appreciate everybody who joined in and weighed in on this important conversation. We'll take a short break now. Be right back.